Hi, I'm Gary White for Channel 6 Central Kentucky Television, and this is our Political Focus program where we give our viewers the opportunity to get to meet the individuals who are going to be candidates on the ballot for both the primary and then possibly in the general election. And we do have the primary election coming up on May 22nd, and I'm here now with Judge David Tapp, who is a candidate for the Kentucky Supreme Court. It is an 8-year position, I believe. Is that correct?
It is. We currently serve 8-year positions now in our current positions.
Right, for the...
I'm a circuit judge, which is the highest level trial court in the state, and then I also serve as an appellate judge over the lower court.
Okay.
So we have hybrid responsibility. So you can't go to any other higher court and have a trial in the Commonwealth. So we handle all the serious felonies, well, all felonies, all the serious civil cases, certain other categories of cases, and then appeals from the lower court.
Okay. Well, let's get started. Let's, if you would, again, it's Judge David Tapp.
David, yeah.
Candidate for Kentucky Supreme Court. If you could tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Let's see, I'm originally a resident of Kentucky. I've been a circuit judge since 2005. Prior to that, I was a district judge. I've had a very lengthy career in the justice system. I have served as a law enforcement officer in Eastern Kentucky and then Hawaii. I served as a prosecutor, and I've had a number of ancillary roles over the years in different things, going back a couple of, well, actually many more decades than I'd like to count in my head at this point. But as I said, circuit judge for a little over 13 years now, and absolutely blessed to have my position.
So tell us about the position for Supreme Court Justice.
Sure.
What is that position?
And that's a question I get all the time. There are 7 men and women who comprise the Kentucky Supreme Court. As you alluded to earlier, they serve an 8-year term. They are the highest court in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and they are a court purely of appellate jurisdiction, meaning that there aren't any trials or anything of that. They are reviewing lower court decisions for error, and for significant error. I mean, every case has some little error in it, but for significant error, an error that essentially is an injustice that would require some corrective action by the lower court. So a lot of people, it's interesting, they can't even name one of our Supreme Court justices, which is really problematic because it's a third co-equal branch of the government, and yet most people really have no recognition of what they do. It is particularly relevant now because some of the issues that we've seen in the last few months arising in the General Assembly, and certainly in some of the decisions made by lower courts, such as my own, will almost certainly reach the Kentucky Supreme Court. So right now, there's a lot of focus on it because of the pension issue, because of tax issues, just a number of issues that have a tremendous economic impact on the Commonwealth of Kentucky, no matter where you reside. And the 7 men and women who make up the court, they act collaboratively. So I'm an individual circuit judge, so when I reach a decision in a case, that's my decision. If I'm hearing an appeal and I decide to affirm, let's say, a lower court decision, that is my decision. The Supreme Court acts collaboratively. They act, in almost all instances, by a majority, at least 4 agreeing to the result in a particular case. It is a collaborative effort as opposed to the kind of individual authority which is granted to circuit judges.
Okay. And as we said, it is an 8-year term.
Yes, sir.
Correct. So what are some of the goals that you would like to achieve if you were elected to be Supreme Court Justice in the first 4 years? What would you like to see accomplished?
There are huge problems in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I was in New Haven the other night, and there were a number of local candidates there, and every single one of those local candidates kept referencing the same types of things. And foremost among those was the problem with drugs in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. We have a tremendous problem. If you look at the number of overdose deaths, last year up until July 1, in the 12 preceding months, 1,568 people died of fatal overdoses in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. By the time midnight rolls around tonight, 4 more people will have died in Kentucky from overdoses. In the short time that we will do this interview, 3 to 4 people here in the United States will have died of fatal overdoses, and that is a recurring problem for health officials, obviously, the medical community, for law enforcement, for courts and everything. And I've got a lengthy background in dealing with those kinds of issues, and with the collaborative effort of the team around me, we have been successful in addressing some of those issues in my own community, which consists of Pulaski, Rockcastle, and Lincoln County. Some of those lessons are now serving as models for judges in other parts of the state. They have been instructive for the General Assembly. Judges from other parts of the nation look at how we deal with the opioid issues particularly, and they're trying to establish programs with the assistance of the federal government, which are somewhat akin to ours. And the whole goal being to reduce fatal overdoses, reduce costs to taxpayers resulting from high incarceration rates of those who have substance abuse issues. And that is something which, if given the opportunity to serve on the Supreme Court, we can continue to stress and grow those efforts here in the Commonwealth. So that's certainly one, but there are others as well. We have, in the United States, the biggest perceived problem with the judicial system is delay. Courts such as my own, we keep track of how long from the time a case is filed until it's finally disposed of. But some of our courts don't. The Kentucky Court of Appeals, for example, does not keep data regarding time to disposition, even though there are national standards which are promulgated for that. In order to mitigate delay, to shorten the amount of time it takes a case to get through an appellate court, whether it be 2 years or 3 years, we have to know how long it's already taking. So there are some administrative issues which can be addressed only at the Supreme Court leadership level and not effectively at my own level. So those are administrative issues, and that's an example there certainly of that. But there are some other things as well, but those are probably two of the easiest examples, I think.
Now, you mentioned the opioid
Yes,
issue, and I know you were recently in Marion County
Yes, sir.
Discussing something at the Marion County Detention Center, with which I just did an interview with Marion County Jailer Barry Brady about it. And tell us a little about it. It's a situation that there's a drug that can potentially be used to help kind of with the opioid situation.
There have been drugs used to treat opioids for a long time. The FDA has 3 approved drugs for the treatment of opioid use disorder. The one that we know the most about is methadone. And there have always been historically some issues with methadone. Certainly in rural America, not as available as some other drugs. Second, it is associated with fatal overdoses, and it is associated with diversion because it is itself an opioid. So that's a huge drawback in some communities to using methadone. The second one is the one we're most familiar with. We've all heard about it, buprenorphine products. Those include Suboxone and Subutex. Can be a very effective drug, but it too is a partial opioid agonist, meaning a partial opioid. So it is diverted, it is misused, and in eastern Kentucky, it is so misused that it has obtained the nickname of heroin helper. It is widely diverted. Local law enforcement is familiar with the problems with Suboxone. When we test people coming from the jails, that is the drug that they test most frequently for, indicating their usage while they're in custody. And there's a number of reasons for that. Really easy to smuggle into jails being the foremost reason for that. So there's problems with that as well because it's being misused. Recently in my own drug court, I had about 70-some people, defendants in the room, and because we had visiting judges from another state watching what we were doing, I just asked the crowd how many of them had misused opioids. And of the approximately 72 people who were there, 50 hands easily shot up, indicating they had improperly used buprenorphine products. But it's the third drug that I've had the best success with, and which I think offers the greatest potential. And the technical name is extended release injectable naltrexone. There's only a single manufacturer in the United States, and it's marketed as Vivitrol. So Vivitrol, unlike the other 2 drugs approved by the FDA, is a non-opioid. You can't get high off of it. What it does is it imposes a 28-day blockade, depending on your own metabolism. Some people 26 days, maybe some people 30 days. But for 28 days, a person cannot become high, if you will, on opioids, and they can't become drunk. It's been approved since 2006 by the FDA for the treatment of alcohol use disorder, 2010 for opioid use disorder. It is, we say non-divertible. I suppose everything's divertible, but there's no motive to divert it because you can't get high on it. So you'll never have law enforcement investigating a burglary at a pharmacy because someone wanted to break in and steal naltrexone. You'll never have your local officers talk to you about the problem they're having with naltrexone on the street because the only purpose it serves is to keep you from becoming intoxicated. It imposes a blockade in the brain to essentially prevent the endorphins, which are released by the use of opioids, from attaching to the receptors. So it's very effective. It is administered by a physician or at a physician's directions in their office. And we are working, in fact, I'm having a meeting tomorrow with the Director of Drug Control Policy here in the state and with an individual from the Pharmacy Board to discuss the possibility that naltrexone can be provided by pharmacists throughout the state, much as you get a flu shot now, which would greatly improve access. But we've had such great success with that approach because it's non-divertible, keeps them from getting high from opioids or drunk from alcohol, and has some other advantages as well that the federal government just 2 weeks ago sent a judge and his team of 6 or 7 people from Virginia here to watch what we were doing so that they could potentially go back and set their own program. And we've had such good success with it that jails across Kentucky and the State Department of Corrections have also adopted naltrexone programs so that when people are about to be released from custody, whether they're a state inmate or whether they're a county inmate, and they suffer from an opioid use disorder, then they can receive up to 3 injections before they're released, about every 28 days apart, so that the first thing they're not concerned with when they get out of custody is going out and trying to score more heroin or Percocets or whatever. And so it's been really successful on that level as well. Was happy to help Marion County. We hope they follow suit. Fit this concept to their own community because every community has their own needs. But hopefully it will be as successful for them as it has been for us.
And it works well in conjunction with addiction issues, with working on your addiction issues as well.
Oh, absolutely. Treatment, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it not only reduces cravings, and you can't get high. We pair that obviously with behavioral counseling and everything, and every form of medication-assisted treatment, which is a big push of the federal government now. Every form of it demands behavioral counseling. No medicine by itself is a magic bullet. It is simply a tool, but in this case, a very effective tool.
Okay. Again, I'm talking with Judge David Tapp, who is running for the Kentucky Supreme Court. And there are 3 individuals who will be on the ballot in May, on May 22nd for the primary. And the top 2 vote getters from those 3 will then move on to the general election in November. It is a nonpartisan position.
Correct.
And so that means that anybody can vote in the primary on May the 22nd, whether you are an independent, a Democrat, or a Republican. These 3 individuals will be the 3, and you have to choose for whom to vote. So tell us, what do you feel makes you different from the other candidates and the most qualified for our voters?
I think if you look at the body of work I've been involved with in the past several years, and while I'd love to take individual credit for it, I really have to credit my team. I have a wonderful team of individuals who support the efforts in my court. And those efforts have produced some real results which have been noticed. And they've been noticed locally, on the state level, and then nationally. In 2011, my drug court team was noticed for its national efforts to gain funding at a time when budgets were being cut all over the nation by Congress to provide drug court funding everywhere in the nation. Again in 2015, 2015, we were the first drug court in Kentucky and only the 14th in the world to receive something called the Community Transformation Award. There are about 2,500 specialty courts in the world, and we were the 14th to receive that award for efforts locally. In addition to that, our program was the very first one to initiate an effective supervision strategy for high-risk probationers, individuals who were likely to reoffend by committing new crimes and violate their probation. We initiated a program which was evaluated several years ago by Morehead State University by researchers there, and that program was found to reduce recidivism, reduce probation revocations. Those offenders used drugs less often. It didn't stop, mind you. We still had people who messed up, but they used drugs less often, and they were more likely to pay their restitution, fines, fees, costs, child support, all at the same time as saving taxpayer dollars. So that's been the subject of quite a bit of state and national review as well. In addition to that, we've gotten some challenges presented to us. So I serve as a policy advisor to the General Assembly through something called the Criminal Justice Policy Assessment Council on issues affecting criminal justice. Last year, I was appointed to advise, for a 3-year term, to advise the U.S. Department of Justice and Congress on issues affecting children who are involved in the justice system anywhere in the nation. I'm a policy advisor this year to the National Prescription Drug and Heroin Abuse Summit, which is the nation's largest bipartisan conference dealing with the opioid issues. And just last week, I was asked to participate in the United States Department of Agriculture's Rural Opioid Initiative. We've been asked to, or tasked with all of those things because we really are producing some good results that can be emulated elsewhere, and frankly need to be implemented because we have so many problems throughout our Commonwealth of Kentucky. Some of those initiatives have been really good things, simply like last year's bill, which was passed by the General Assembly, signed by the governor, which simply reduced certain kinds of occupational barriers for individuals who wanted to pursue something that involved a license but had been previously convicted of a non-related felony. Let's say a possession charge, and you wanted to be a barber in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. That was a potential bar. It was a potential bar to getting a license to install a heating and air conditioning systems. So we reduce those barriers when the felony is not related to the occupation. People shouldn't be barred for life, obviously, from pursuing a decent occupation which they can support their family and they can pay their taxes, child support, and those kinds of things. So we've been able to do a lot, and frankly, that's one of the reasons why I believe I'm certainly a qualified candidate for the Supreme Court.
And again, this is for the Kentucky Supreme Court, and for our district, which includes, in our area, I think there are, what, 26?
27 counties.
There are 27 counties in this district,
Sure.
and that does include Marion, Washington, and Nelson counties, which is our coverage area. And these individuals will be on the ballot for that. And again, I'm here with Judge David Tapp for the Kentucky Supreme Court, nonpartisan race. As we close out, you just have some final words you'd like to share? I
would encourage people to make sure they vote. I'm going to end up by quoting Abraham Lincoln, if you will, not exactly the best I can. Abraham Lincoln had a pretty famous quote regarding elections, the importance basically of going to vote. He said, elections belong to the people. They get to decide. And if they want to turn their back to the fire and burn their behinds, well, they can sit on their blisters. And what he meant by that is we don't really pay attention like we should to voting. And we know that's true in everything from presidential elections to certain local elections. But it's even worse in nonpartisan elections like judicial races. Traditionally in most counties, whatever the highest vote partisan race is, only about half or even less of the people vote in judicial races. And given the importance of the issues involved before the Kentucky Supreme Court in the next several years, I think it would behoove all Kentuckians, whether you're concerned about opioids, law enforcement, economic issues, it would behoove us all to become educated and cast an intelligent vote. So I guess that's what my request would be.
Thank you very much. Again, this has been Political Focus here on Channel 6 Central Kentucky Television. I'm here with Judge David Tapp, who will be on the ballot on May the 22nd for the Kentucky Supreme Court. This is Gary White, Channel 6 Central Kentucky Television.
Thank you.